Good afternoon and welcome to Book Brilliance, the author's voice. And I am beside myself with excitement because we have an amazing author with us today. But more than that, and she'll tell you a wee bit more about what's really driving her wild at the moment. But without any further let me introduce Anna Parker-Naples. Good afternoon, Anna.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I got a bit tongue-tied, which is a bit unusual for me. But thank you. I love look at your setup. I love what you're doing. So tell us a wee bit about what's going on for you and what's got you to where you are today.
Well, there's a whole big story behind that. So you see me now, I'm inside a recording studio, which is actually part of my house. And I help people now to get their message out there through the medium of podcasting. And the reason that I do that is I came into the coaching space 3 years ago, having left behind a massive career in audio and voice, including being nominated and a finalist in Hollywood numerous times, because I felt that I had evolved and that I wanted people to know that they have so much potential and we can change the world. You've just got to change yourself one step at a time. And what I discovered as I came into the online and coaching space was that actually there are so many people who are change makers and leaders who don't know how to reach the masses. And what I was seeing was that podcasting was becoming that medium. And I'd run a podcast about 2-3 years ago and it had grown. But what I realized was that I hadn't learned how to launch it properly. So it couldn't have the success that it would have had if I'd known about that. So I went back to basics, really. I already had all of the massive audio background, but I went back to basics on how to launch and how to launch a podcast specifically. And so now I help many people to launch top ranking podcasts, not just here, but around the world, as part of the podcast membership and working one-to-one with me.
Oh, amazing. And I'm sure we'll touch on it again in a minute. But of course, this is the author's voice. But you and I are so linked because of it's all this voice, voice being your truth, getting out there, being seen, being heard. I talk about being noticed, so listened to. I know you've got a similar saying as well. But let's get to the author's voice because you did an amazing thing. And you decided to put all your genius into a book. So tell us how that came about, writing your book.
So my book's called Get Visible, How to Have More Impact, Influence and Income. And I'd had the idea for this. I launched it in November 2019. So only 6 months ago, but it's been an incredible 6 months since I launched. I wrote that book because I wanted to tell my story, my powerful story of how I went from being disabled and depressed and feeling like feeling angry at the world, to changing what I felt about myself through NLP and other techniques, to fully recovering, to going on then to see that I had potential to have a career getting my voice out there. I was an actress before, I still am an actress, to get my voice out there and realize I could do it from home and I could be world class and I could be at the top of an industry in the whole world. And once I'd done that and I was standing on the red carpets in Hollywood, I knew then that I had to get that message out there. So the book was that kind of, it's a very raw book, very vulnerable book about my whole journey, how I used to see the world. It's quite uncomfortable, quite ugly, the things I say, but how I'd always put a good front on. But what was going on in my brain processes behind the scenes and why I now recognize that I had those thoughts and those limiting beliefs. And then it's once you've kind of got to that nitty gritty of how you think and feel, actually then you can decide what you want to create. So the book then is, I guess the early stages of the book are very self-help and motivational. But after that, it's the strategies to get visible. What does that mean for your industry? How can you make the right connections? What kind of content do you need to create? How can you get on podcasts? How can you become a speaker? How can you get your book out there? To walk that path from feeling like you're nobody and invisible to being at the top of your field and known and credible. And I think, and that's really what that book was about. So that was released in November. And I actually, about a month before it, I launched my second podcast, which is called Entrepreneurs Get Visible. And that podcast was always going to be a very strong vehicle for not only my podcast work, but also for driving sales to the book. And when I released my podcast, it had incredible global
I
success.
remember.
Yeah, so I outranked Tony Robbins for about 3 weeks. All of my UK mentors, people like Amy Porterfield and Marie Forleo and Gary Vaynerchuk, I smashed them all in the charts for
You did.
weeks. And actually, for 3 weeks in the States and 6 weeks in the UK, I was the only solo female podcaster in
Wow.
the business charts, and that felt pretty incredible, given that years before I felt that I didn't have a voice and I couldn't speak up.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's the thing. And you know, when you said voice, and it's about the truth, and you're talking your truth, and sometimes our truth can be ugly, but it's when we face that ugly truth and things about ourselves, and how we come out of any adversity that we might find, we actually come out, you know, bigger, stronger, ready to lead. And as you've alluded to, you are definitely a world leader. You know, you've done fantastic with your book. But what's great, and for someone like you to come on to the author's voice, is to show other people how being an author leads to so many other doors opening. So how is your book opening doors for you?
It's the people who find me through the book. Maybe they've done a search in Amazon or they've seen somebody recommend it, that then come into my funnel. So I'm a business owner, I'm an
Yes,
entrepreneur. They come into
yes.
my funnel and they end up working with me. So many people who have I've just closed my launch for the my podcast membership. Many people who joined actually found me initially through my book, but it's more than that. It's the people around me who know I've written a best-selling book. So when I launched that book, when I published it, I decided I was going to self-publish because I wanted to understand the mechanisms so that later on I could help other people with that. And I was prepared, and this is important, I was prepared to not get it 100% right so that I could learn and teach it. And that's kind of an interesting way to go at it. And one of the reasons was I'd actually done a course with Hay House, who do their amazing Writers' Day. And I submitted, they have this competition every year where one person will win a, what's it called? What's the word? One person will win
A
a publishing
sponsorship.
deal.
Oh yeah, okay.
A publishing deal.
Publishing deal.
And
Okay.
I felt really strongly that my book has got a big message and that I knew that it could have a ripple effect worldwide. And when I submitted it, I got very positive feedback, but the advice they gave me was along the lines of, this is paraphrasing now, that I should change who it was for, because there's no entrepreneur. I wanted to target entrepreneurs and creatives, and they told me that entrepreneurs would not want to buy it from buy a book like that from someone who was not a multimillionaire and did not have millions of followers. And they advised me to change it, and then they might look at it again. And I stuck by my guns. That didn't feel right to me. Didn't feel right. And actually, I am a creative, but I'm also an entrepreneur. And a lot of what I talk about in the book is that the more you accept yourself and your creativity,
Exactly.
the better you're going to be as an entrepreneur, the better you're going to be as a human being. So I then decided at that point, I'm not going to waste my time with those gatekeepers. Yes, I would love one day maybe to have a publishing deal, but right now I am not holding back on my content and the thing I want to put out into the world.
Well, it's
And
that
I'm really,
conviction.
yeah, and I also knew that I wanted to narrate the book myself. So I wanted to make sure I had the audio rights because my background is as a voice actor and an audiobook narrator. So by sticking to my guns then and self-publishing, and there are things about the book that I'm not 100% happy with, and I always thought, well, if whatever I'm not happy with, there'll be a second edition when people have let me know the impact of this book. And it's an evolution, really. So when I launched that, I'd been talking about to my audience, which isn't massive, for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And when I launched it, within 24 hours, it became a #1 bestseller in 20 categories
Yeah.
across Amazon,
Amazing.
across
Amazing.
entrepreneurship, business, success, health. And it was staggering. But actually, Brenda, there was one moment that I'd really like to share with people
Yeah.
that felt really special. So that book opens 10 years ago with me sitting in my wheelchair at a New Year's Eve party. And at the time, I was so depressed, so unhappy, pretty much thought life was over. And I never thought I'd get out of that wheelchair, and I never thought I'd recover, and I never thought I would be recognised for my work. Recognition was really important. I
Yes.
never thought I could be an actor again, or whatever, or have any influence of any kind. And we'd gone to this party, and it was the first time I'd left my bed other than to go to hospital for weeks. And I refused, actually. It was so painful to get dressed or do anything. I refused to get changed. And what I used to wear, I was heavily pregnant, was jogging bottoms and a vest top. So in the end, we decided we would go to this fancy dress party dressed as Lou and Andy from Little Britain, which of course is by David Walliams, and I can't remember his name.
Don't
Andy,
ask me. I'm not.
can't
I can see
remember.
him. I know.
Anyway.
Small. I know. I know. I'm hopeless with names.
So
Carry on.
the book opens with that, and it's obviously a really pivotal moment in my life. 5 days after the book launched, on the front page of Amazon, so like literally the home page, it was at the month before Christmas. So David Walliams had just released 2 books in the run up to Christmas, the same week as me. And this amazing picture came up of the books that Amazon were then recommending, because so many people had bought it. And it was one of his children's books, and then mine, and then his other children's book. Yay! And it was like this incredible journey that I could never have foreseen.
Serendipity.
It was amazing, and that was one of the weirdest things about getting my book out there. But getting your book out there, it felt really vulnerable.
Yeah, it is, especially when you've got your story entwined, and story is very important for people in business, to make sure that they include that story, show that vulnerability, because the strength in your vulnerability. So, you know, you started at the top talking about the podcast. So what piece of advice would you give a business owner who's thinking about using their voice to write a book?
Just get it done. You are procrastinating because you're scared. Get it done. So to put this in context, it felt like a 5-year journey to write that book. But in reality, it only took me a few months, because I scheduled my diary and I gave myself a deadline. I was sick of not being an author. Yeah. I'd wanted to be an author for years, and I was not prepared to have another birthday come and go. So I planned to launch it the day before my 42nd birthday. I think I'm 42.
Fabulous.
Get to that point where I've forgotten. I planned to launch it the day before that. And actually, because it went out early, it meant that by the time I hit 42, I was a #1 bestselling international author, which was amazing. But what was amazing is that once you've done one book, you realise there's so much more that you want to share. So I've actually now written my second book, which will be coming out in the next couple of months, which fantastic. I wrote in lockdown, because the process isn't as hard as you think. There's a lot of myths around how hard it is. It's hard if you make it hard. Exactly. I realised that the things I wanted to share in that book, I'd already done trainings on, podcasts on, talks on. I'd been doing it for years. So how can I just stop all the faff and actually just get it out there? Yeah. And so there's a couple of things really. So one is just get it done. The other thing is that I did an audiobook version, and obviously that's my background. I come from that Audible. I actually was the first narrator in the UK to work with Audible and ACX, which is the program where you can work with audiobook narrators. And so I piloted that and beta tested it for them. My Audible book still gets me more copies and brings me more revenue than the paperback. So there's something really powerful in that. Yeah, and I think a lot of it is because they hear my voice. So one of the things that I plan to do, my third book now, and a course that I'm putting together, is to help expert authors get their book into Audible. Because I will teach the whole process, whether you want to outsource it to somebody else or whether you want to narrate it yourself. And I will teach you how to do it so it sounds amazing, not just do it so it's botched and it's up there, but it's a bit embarrassing. Because that's my background.
Well, but I know we are definitely going to have a lot more to talk about. I certainly will want you coming back and telling us more about the second book. Mm-hmm. And also, I know I will want to be talking about you, because talking with you in terms of business, because as a publisher, you know, I'm looking at partnership with someone who does voice for Audible books. So definitely I think there's longevity here. As you know, we've done a few things together already, but I just love your energy. I love your positivity. I loved your absolute drive, your conviction, the confidence with which you put yourself out there, and all that vulnerability. So I'm going to leave you with the last word. What's the one other thing? Just do it. What else would you tell an entrepreneur who's ready to write the book?
You can't change those lives until you get your message out there. If you can't be heard, you can't make a difference. And so I think deep down that matters to all authors. But on the other side of it, if you don't write your book, you can't have the income level that you want, and you will continue to struggle.
Exactly.
Put your book out there, you are putting your stamp on the world, and your confidence will grow, and the amount you can charge will grow. And amazing things will happen as a result of your book just being out there, but not if it's still on your laptop or in your head.
No. Well, Anna, I certainly love being in your company. 10 minutes in your company just energizes anybody. So if you ever need to be energized around your business, go and listen to Anna, read her book, join her groups. And Anna, we'll get all your links and put them below this video as we just let that go worldwide as well. So Anna, thank you very much for gracing the Author's Voice chair today, and I wish you well with everything you're doing in your podcasting and obviously as an author, because after all, this is the Author's Voice. So thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.